Okay, I think we can go ahead and start. For those in the room, in person, the screen is giving you a QR code that you can connect with your smartphone, and you will be able to vote in the polling question. Those are not for the online people, those are only for the people in the room. If you will wish to participate and make a comment, the microphone will be given to you in the room as you raise your hand. For the people online, I welcome you all. This is an important session, and I hope that it will be able to accommodate exchange and engagement with all of you. We have time for this program dedicated for the engagement. So, Kaliroy, if we can have my ability to start the session, that would be great. How are we doing on the stage camera? Tom, what are you seeing in the room on the screen?
Oh, Yadin, you can go on and begin. Maybe just I'll make this comment like you did. There's a few people in the room now. Many more are coming in the next half hour as they arrive from their buses. And so those in the room have already heard, maybe those online are already will be a part of the polling questions, but to come onto the Zoom, if you're in the room, scan the QR code, join the Zoom, and you'll be able to participate in the polling questions, but make sure your mic is on mute. Otherwise, Yadin, we're ready to begin.
Great. Thank you, Tom. Good morning to you from Visakhapatnam. And I am co-moderating this session with Tom Judd, who is physically on site, and I'm virtually joining him. It is an exciting event, part of the exciting Congress, the 5th ICE HTMC that we are organizing in different parts of the world, as you know, every other year. This time we're in India, and I would like to thank AMTZ for the great hospitality they extended to us, and for the happy news they just received that they were admitted to the World Trade Center Association, specifically with the focus on clinical engineering. How better that can be fitting what we are here to do together. For all of you online, as well as in the room, I'm delighted that you decided to join us, and appreciate that that might be crazy time, but you are standing there and participating. For me, it is 10 p.m. at night in Houston, Texas, and I have all the energy to have a great dialogue with all of you. If I can ask Kaliroy to put the agenda up, we can talk about what this session is going to be going to cover. Can we have the agenda, please? Thank you. Great. So what we intend to do is, wow, in the UK is 4 a.m. Good, strong coffee. Wow. I'm proud of you, Dan. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. What Tom and I, as co-moderator of this event, intend to do is to give you a summary. Where did we come from and what did we achieve, especially in the last 2 years? There's a lot to discuss and a lot to share, and Tom would lead this part. As we're going through that, I would ask for polling question and ask you to answer those, select the proper response until we get to the final part of the agenda, where we will rank, number 5 there, will rank the challenges and make, in your opinion, a list of what is the most significant and what is the least significant of the subject. We will take those subjects and we'll see if we can match them with regional work, or should we work on all of them all together simultaneously globally. This is something that we wait to hear from you, how we go about that. In general, as the Global International Clinical Engineering and Health Technology Management Congress is about to start, this Global CE Summit is a biannual event that started in Hangzhou, China in 2015. And before I call on Tom to start telling us about this history and what we achieved recently, I want to remind you, those online, please mute. When you would wish to make a comment, in the bottom of the screen, under the button called reactions, you will see an option to raise your hand. So if you go down to the bottom of the screen, place reaction, and here is, I raise my hand, and when you have been addressed, you can push again and you lower your hand. So for the online people, you will be on mute, you will go to reaction, raise your hand, please lower your hand when you address your issue, and then we will also give you the opportunity for an audio. And Ricardo is testing the system, I see. That's good, good. Ricardo, we saw your hand up. That's great, appreciate that. Ricardo will help us with tracking comments on the chat box, so we will remember to address your comment, even if you write them, not only if we hear and see you. So that as far as the rules of engagement in this session. In order to progress, we need to have some order, and that's how we're going to do it. At this point, Kaliroy, I would like to have the first 2 polling questions, question 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you can post them. For the people in the room, there was a QR code for you to choose, and you can engage in the room after you register for the, here's the this QR code.
Yadin, do we want to do history first, or do we want to show them the poll now, or?
Yeah, let's start just demographic. I realize that people are still wandering into the room in person, but just as a demographic, it will be interesting to see who is on the line in the room at this point. So, Kaliroy, can we have the polling question? I don't see them yet. No polling question.
They're showing up on my screen.
Oh, great. Thank you. I don't know why I don't see them. Okay. Thank you, Fred. There should be 4 questions. I'll give you 2 more minutes. That should be the easy part of the polling question. One more minute. Twenty seconds. Ready to call it. Please hurry up and finish. And if we can see summary, Kaliroy, that'd be great. Do you have the results? I don't see them. I hope you see the results. And with that,
Yadin, we do see the results in here.
okay, I cannot see them, so I cannot comment, but I'll give microphone to Tom, who is going to take us through the major content. Please, Tom.
But the answer, Yadin, is that it's 90% clinical engineers in the room right now, or have taken the poll so far.
Good, excellent. Okay. Okay, Tom, the microphone and the stage is yours.
Thank you, Yadin. I mean, we've been doing this Tom and Yadin dialogue thing with people for a pretty long time. I think this may set a record, though, with 9,200 miles between us. But we clinical engineers like to adapt along the way and have fun, so that's what we'll do today. Thank you, Kaliroy. For those in the rooms, people will continue to come in, as we know, during registration. By the way, I'm Tom Judd from Global Clinical Engineering Alliance and past president of chair of CED. And I had the privilege, as Yadin has said, to co-moderate this session. And for those of you that haven't been able to get into the Zoom meeting to maybe be a part of these polls, because this is online for Zoom, that people around the world that are not in the room, but if you're in the room, you can join the Zoom meeting in the way right you see with this QR code. But as Yadin was saying, you know, we've got a history of these summits, and he said, what are the summits about? The summits are about our global community of clinical engineers, biomedical engineers who serve at the point of care, other practitioners fall into our realm as defined by the World Health Organization. Certainly clinicians, our clinicians are in the room. We honor you. We're happy to partner with you, and nurses and other allied health. But we've actually, Yadin led the charge as a CED chair to have the first International Clinical Engineering Health Technology Management Congress in China in 2015, 8 years ago. A good group of folks coming in. Join the Zoom meeting on the screen if you can with the QR code. And so in 2015, we had our first, not only Congress, but we had this first summit where we were setting priorities based on the consensus around the world of what were the leading things to do. And then many of you know there was a Congress again in 2017. We try to move from region to region of the world. So we started in the Western Pacific. We moved to the Americas in 2017 to Brazil. In 2019 to the Europe region, the Euro region as defined by WHO in Rome. In 2021, we all wanted to go to Disney World, but COVID prevented that. So we ended up having a program virtually. And here we are in Southeast Asia in 2023. My point being, though, this is the 5th Global Clinical Engineering Summit. They go along with each of the Congresses. And I'm going to show a couple slides here in a moment that show, so what priorities have we set in the past? How has that impacted us today? And what are the, during this meeting, we will set priorities for the future with all of you together. So, Callie, moving ahead. And some of you may be a little bit confused by all the terminology. We have the Global Clinical Engineering Community, and it's really 2 organizations, IFMBE Clinical Engineering Division, affectionately called CED, and the Global Clinical Engineering Alliance. So, but looking back here, what were the priorities by the way, when I think about the history of all these summits, you know, a lot of things come to mind, but the Global Clinical Engineering Journal, our own profession's journal, came out of those priority settings, and many other things. But you know, many webinars that meet the needs of you and your colleagues as you go about your daily practice. But so let me turn back to 2021, just a couple years ago. And by then, you know, we're getting smarter and smarter. I mean, together we make it better has been the mantra for many years. But in 2021, this group came together virtually, and we came up with 5 priorities, 3 on the screen there I'll mention, and then you know, some others that I'll also mention. So the first was capacity building. You know, and as you perhaps work with your Minister of Health in your countries, are there the right number of clinical engineers, biomedical engineers who serve at the point of care, using WHO definitions here? The right people with the right education, training, and appropriate management to do the roles that really make a difference in your country. So capacity building. And out of that, Callie, we may have it on another slide, some of the images, and so hold on, but we'll see that in a moment. We did build in the past 2 years a capacity building model, maturity model. So I'll show that in a moment. Second was, if you have the right people, the right education, in the right roles, and the right management, can you make an impact? And in other words, what can you say to the minister when you go into their office and say, you need more biomedical engineers, you need more clinical engineers, because we're going to help you make a difference getting the clinical outcomes you want in your daily work, or in managing the public health care of your country. And so this is a little bit, most of us know how to maybe grow a new clinical engineer. And I'll have more to say about that. I think I'm going to show that in the graphics of the maturity model in a moment. But it's a little bit more tricky to say, how can we make impact? Now, we have our own definitions of impact, but we've got to connect with these health administrators, these physicians, and how they think. And so when we talk about clinical outcomes, that sounds good, but there's some steps in between. And if you see over on the right-hand side, and well, clinical, it's the first box in the upper right there is activities. So I like to think about it with my colleague, Dr. Dan Clark in the UK during COVID. And, you know, how could you help that population get better clinical outcomes during COVID? And one of the ways that the National Health Service in the UK said was, let's put in everybody's home that we can a pulse oximeter. And some of you instantaneously know why that's important. I'll say a little bit more about that here in a moment. But when they first did that, they were putting out a variety of pulse oxes, and they weren't all accurate. But clinical engineering stepped in the National Health Service and said, hey, Mr. Minister, let's get this right on the front end. And so Dan and his team out of Nottingham, there north of London, working for the whole National Health Service, made sure that there were accurate pulse oxes put out to the community. So that the first activity of clinical engineering, the first box, was accurate, appropriately selected pulse oximeters. But so what were the outcomes of that? Well, then clinically, and the answer is then a patient with an accurate pulse oximeter, as their oxygen if they got COVID and as their oxygen saturation started to decrease, science has shown that the earlier you treat before it decreases too much into the low 90s, for example, if you treat early, you get better clinical outcomes in fighting COVID. And so they were able to get, so that was a clinical outcome, but then so you're able to do that maybe in one city, in one household, around one hospital, but then you do it around the whole country. That's the longer term in a particular year, maybe the third box. You sustained a intervention that's getting you better outcomes, that's making impact. And then maybe the last box is you sustain it over several years. So that the process of getting the right pulse oxes out there, making sure they're appropriate, the patient's doing the measurement, being encouraged, and intervening on COVID sooner. Anyway, so you get my drift. So that's an impact measurement it's a theory of change model. And there were several case studies. I won't go into them now, but I believe they're from China and they're from maybe the program I talked about in UK and some other places.
So Tom, let me jump in for a second, because as I'm watching the chat box for comments, there is an interesting comment came from Ricardo that said what you just covered is very fundamental, because if we are not engaging ourselves, if we are not aligning ourselves, if we're not focusing the content, just like you're showing here on the priorities, nobody will do it for us. So we must strengthen the profession by looking at the mirror and volunteer to engage and push the priority further. Create the content succinct and push it through the network to the appropriate target, so we will have the impact. Then we can measure the impact. Tom, back to you.
Well, and you clinical engineers don't do your job for the glory of the job. You do it because you're trained to, you're called to, you want to do it, you make a difference. And I'm thinking of Dan is a very humble individual and a member of our Global Clinical Engineering Alliance, and certainly a history with CED as well. And he got the Order of the British Empire because of his intervention. And he didn't seek that, but I'm just saying it's good to be rewarded at a high level for the kind of work we do and that Yadin and Ricardo are talking about. So besides building the right workforce, helping that workforce make the right impact, a third priority from 2021 was how does a minister, when he hires biomedical engineers, and I know we've got Dr. Ashraf Fazzaman from Bangladesh here, and the minister has hired many new biomedical engineers, clinical engineers in the past couple of years around COVID. But how do they know that the competency of those clinical engineers is assured? And that's the whole credentialing business. And so how one gets credentialed in one country varies from another country. There's about 80% of the attributes of that credentialing that are maybe the same around the world, but 20% variety country by country. And so it's certainly been the purpose of the global community, CED, now led by Fabiola Martinez here from Mexico, and GCEA led by Yadin, to create the ability to help practitioners get certified in their countries, in their regions around the world. And it's still a work in progress. But we got some significant data at the end of 2022, nearly 900 responses from 128 countries about a survey of our practitioners around the world. And we now know a little bit about the differences of their activities, and we will be able to create those certification and credentialing programs around the world. So next slide. So those first three priorities, a couple more that you can immediately see are very important was policy. Actually, I think Dr. Sharma entered the room. Thank you for hosting us, Jitendra. He has led the way in working with government, both public side, private side, different ministers of electronics and health and others here in this country, showing value and getting that written into national policy. And you'll hear more about that during the Congress. So we have to earn the right to be involved in policy. I think of Tazeen Bukhari in Pakistan, who got her undergraduate degree. This is kind of like Adriana Velasquez, got her undergraduate degree in her own country, went off to the UK to get a master's, came back and started serving in her hospitals there in Pakistan. But then during COVID, because of her competence, was raised up to work with her Minister of Health, like the oxygen surveys and the respiratory equipment needed to treat COVID across the country and so forth. And then she's now working with WHO in her country. My point being, we need to educate healthcare decision makers, both public and private, about how we can help with policy. And you don't have to go too far to think about that. Just think about the impact of telehealth during COVID. And clinical engineers are the right people to work with our physician, health IT leaders, and others to educate about how you can do more and more telehealth, for example. Clearly, the global clinical engineering community, and I know some new folks coming in the room, once again, it's IFMB Clinical Engineering Division, CED, and the Global Clinical Engineering Alliance, GCEA, and we're looking together here, setting the priorities for the next couple of years. But we serve in partnership with WHO, with the World Health Organization. and predominantly Adriana Velazquez in the medical device unit. Although during this next week, those of you are able to stay, you know that during COVID, we work with the emergency department of WHO, particularly around oxygen. Our friends in Build Health International know that very well, that are here in the crowd. And we work with the innovations part of WHO. But our first love and our first priority is working with Adriana and the medical device unit. So what has happened? So just before, so in policy, I mentioned India, but I also mentioned Pakistan, but I also want to mention Mexico. Mexico has a history of the National Clinical Engineering Society working with the Minister of Health to make a difference for 20 plus years. And so there's some good benchmarks, there's some good examples that other countries can take advantage of. So with WHO, we were very busy during COVID. Many of you know we, this global community, CED and GCEA, put on 80 webinars the last 3 or 4 years, educating about best practices around respiratory devices, oxygen, and so on. Yadin and I, on behalf of GCEA, but working with CED's network, worked on the last couple compendium of innovations for low resource settings for WHO that have been published in 2022 and 2023. And there's another one happening right moment. And then I think there's, I don't know, 30 some videos on the WHO website about how to manage COVID related, respiratory related devices. And you know, maybe 100 people were involved in that. Many of you in the room were maybe involved in developing this very specific training. So next slide. All right, so we've jumped ahead. Do we have the slide showing the the capacity building model, or do we? I mean, can you show it a little bit further down before I show some of this data? And we want to not hear me talk forever. We want to start to engage you. Maybe it might be at the end. It's not. That's okay. But for capacity building, let me just mention, many of you have seen this, but we said there's, you know, low, middle, and developed countries. There's a framework, and at each of them, what's the knowledge base? What's the investment? And what are the competencies? Oh, there it is. Me of little faith. So you see across the top knowledge there in purple, then you see investment in the middle, and then you see competencies. You see low, middle, and high income countries. This is a model of how you can build capacity. You've got to have the right education, training, perhaps internships, credentialing, and in the modern day digital health and innovation, knowledge to go along with how's the private and public sector investing in where their medical equipment comes from, you know, whether they're building a unit perhaps at the national level or the regional level. What is the department? How is it staffed and built? How do you manage the inventory, like with computerized medical maintenance? And are you adding in the features of quality and safety and measurement and so forth? And then in competencies, we all know we never get enough competency, but traditional activities, PM, repair, we have to work as a team with other healthcare leaders. We can operate a lot of this competency work through our national societies as they identify gaps and help us grow. We need to develop leaders, and we need to be involved in policy and regulation. So lots of words there, but you get my drift that we have created this capacity building model, and you can think about how you want to use this. So Callie, so I've actually talked about, I guess at this moment, 5 priorities: capacity building, impact measurement, credentialing, policy, and WHO partnerships. I want to note that, you know, I happened to be CED's chair until June of 2022, and then I turned it over to a better person, Fabiola from Mexico. But my point is, CED, the last 18 months or so, has worked very hard on women in clinical engineering in addition to those first priorities. And you'll see a lot of that in the Congress, and incredible work there. And then the last priority, new priority in the last 2 years, has been by GCEA, where we've created many, many alliances. Global Clinical Engineering Alliance. We have created many alliances, and we'll show that. But so what are some specific actions the last 2 or 3 years that have allowed us to work on our priorities. One is this compendia that I mentioned about, the innovations for low recess settings around health technologies, led by WHO, and that has been formally a GCEA CED partnership to respond and build that compendia. And you can imagine that's ensuring that we get appropriate devices on the front end that meet all the regulatory requirements, but meet the sustainability requirements that we in clinical engineering work on. In terms of relationships, GCEA has particularly, and CED, I mean, I talk about the global community together, have worked on relationships with health leaders in India. In 2021, we worked with health leaders in the International Hospital Federation, IHF. Many of you know that's the hospital administrators for around the world. So Yadin and I were involved in their Congress a couple years ago. And the virtual Congress was not only CED and GCEA, but we partnered with AAMI. Many of you know Amy. In fact, Amy is partnering on this program and broadcasting what we're doing now 15 hours later in the Americas. So next slide.
So Tom, maybe we can insert some polling question at this point, but also before you continue to 2022 is looking at the chat box. There are a couple comments from Elliot regarding digital health. And as you mentioned, the interest that we have in expanding our training of clinical engineers, the appreciation to the role of digital health in the future healthcare system is significant, but we don't see enough academic program that aim at clinical engineering training in this field. The whole thing with cybersecurity, robotic, etc., is artificial intelligence assisted surgery with imaging all included. So that was a very good comment from Elliot. And again, if there is anybody on the virtual side that want to raise hand, go to the bottom of your screen where you have reactions button and select raise your hand. At this point, Kaliroy, please insert the professional purpose polling question.
Just before that, Yadin, you can't see it, but in the hall here, we've had an explosion of people, and that's a good thing. Maybe explosion, not a good word, but we've had a wide, many people are walking in the room right now, and that's very cool.
Great.
Also, they're being shown the QR code to join the Zoom meeting so they can be involved in these polls right now. And we want people to scan the code with your phones, join the Zoom meeting so that you can respond. And of course, keep your mic on mute. But there'll be ways to communicate a little later. But
So,
do you want me to continue, or you want to try to do more of the polling right now?
somehow I don't see the polling questions. So I don't know what the room is seeing. What's is shared on the screen now?
What Kaliroy is doing is sharing that initial poll again, because once again, many new people in the room. So we'll take a moment to do that, Yadin.
If she can, that's great.
Isn't this fun to coordinate together 9,200 miles from one another? I think it's very cool.
So is the AMTZ IT group can see why my screen is not changing with the room screen?
Yeah. Can you show the results maybe to this?
I think, Tom, you need to lead it because I don't see what is posted.
How many? Yeah, I think we move on at this point, but we will make sure you know what the polling is telling us, Yadin.
So we did the first part demographic again.
They're working on it right now, Yadin.
Okay.
You know, perfect is boring, I think.
Hmm.
So we're shooting for really, really good today.
Okay.
And then when I look across this crowd, I see a lot of really, really good. So.
Okay. We can accommodate the time for this, and then
And part of why Yadin is drilling down on the polling, because it's going to begin to tell us not only who's in the room, but soon enough, it's going to tell us your thoughts about priorities. So we'll circle back to that.
correct. And if I can remind people that what you, Tom, is doing is building up. Where did we come from, and what did we achieve? And based on that sharing good example of where we might going next. And that will be the final polling question, ranking those challenges. So that's what is taking place. I would suggest, Tom, if you can go ahead and move with your presentation.
But we are, Yadin, we are able to see the results on the screen here, and we're in those first two questions of what's your job role and how long you've been in the profession. We're seeing the answers there. So.
Oh, great. Okay.
And the numbers are increasing. Calroy is going to give me back the screen for. So you saw me before talking about capacity building priorities, and we've begun to create relationships with several stakeholders. But so here we go. Yadin, this is one of your favorites here in 2022. The global clinical engineering community, really health technology management community, has a very tight relationship now with the global health technology assessment community. And that's through the Euroscan International Network. And we've created a memorandum of understanding so that we can formally work together. Yadin, you want to mention too about that?
We work very focused on realizing that the clinical engineering community is but one party that is joining the table of healthcare systems. We have other stakeholders that already there. We want to work with them. And one group that is specifically not well connected is the technology assessment group. Tremendous amount of work. We need to do more together. They can bring tremendous power in large data analysis and financial consideration. We bring the engineering aspect, and we can work together. So in May 2022, we signed a memorandum of understanding between the Global Clinical Engineering Alliance and the Euroscan International Network that was a start of the European common market and expand to the rest of the world. That was a good example for us to see how can we do others. And we exercise memorandum of understanding with CED and then with AAMI. And the one with AAMI is actually contributing to our ability to record the Congress, including this session, and share that with the North, Central, and South America when they are awake. Just delay time that right now it's not good time for them to be up. Will be accommodating participation in recorded time. So here is a result of working with another group, AAMI. And also, we have agreed that AMI will provide us guidelines in English, part of their standard library, and we will translate it to other languages for distribution around the world. Very productive, very effective way of sharing knowledge. And we are working with country by country with additional MOUs to strengthen the education and training of clinical engineering and collaboration with other stakeholders to build better competent and capacity building clinical engineering community. And finally,
Yadin, I was just going to say, the global clinical engineering community is definitely not the Yadin and Tom story. We get the privilege of representing you folks many, many times. That was an example of, there's in our country in the US, there's a National Academy of Science, a National Academy of Medicine, and there's a National Academy of Engineering at the highest level in our country. And Yadin and I got to go tell stories, not about us. We got to go tell stories about you. And we put that into this editorial a year ago. And so that, that may help us gain some traction, not only in our country, but in other countries. Yadin's, of course, we formalized the relationship with GCEA and CED on how we work together, which, by the way, informally is wonderful, and formally. And, since 2015 in China there in that first Congress that I was talking about when we began here a few minutes ago, we've had Global Clinical Engineering Day and Global Clinical Engineering Week, October 21st, and that week, typically around the world. And I just mentioned in 2022, we work very closely with the key societies in Brazil, but think about that times 20, because we worked with 20 different countries during that week. And maybe next slide, Kelly, because I know we want to start to take input from folks pretty quick here. In 2023, there has, just to let you know, who do we communicate with when we send out these all worldwide announcements? And it's about 30,000 health technology leaders in about 210 countries. And even in this program, in this Congress here, that particularly will be Saturday and Sunday as a part of the Congress, we had, you've heard me say, many of you, 330 abstracts submitted, with 650 people standing behind those abstracts, and we had 110 countries there. So, we don't always have the clinical engineer in the country. We may have the physician leader, we may have an administrative leader, but these are folks that are very interested in what WHO calls health technologies, which is what WHO has looked to the clinical engineering community, the biomedical engineering community, to manage over the years. We have a very good relationship with AMTZ, and more to come on that during the Congress. That's why we're here right now. Incredible relationship with, forgive me, China, with the second largest country in the world also, with China, with its, this is kind of incredible. China has 36,000 hospitals and 94,000 clinical engineers. So that sounds big. We're very involved with the health IT leadership around the world. I don't know if my colleague, Dr. Manish Kohli, is in the room, who's born in India, but served out of the US, a physician who's been the board chair of HIMSS, which you recognize as health IT leadership around the world. And so people like myself and Elliot Sloan and Ricardo Silva and others have been very involved with HIMSS, particularly around digital health issues and so forth. So Yadin, we're getting near the end of looking backwards. Maybe one more slide.
Can we just make sure that we, before you finish, covered poll 3, which has 2 segments, and Kaliroy can put it up. Poll 3, if we can get those up.
So this is the third question in the poll. Folks are getting a chance to answer. I'm sorry. Second question, sorry. So we're waiting on you. Go ahead.
So Tom, what question do you see on the screen?
Yeah, it's coming up now. And we've had an emerging crowd in the room. So I talked about past Congresses. First one in China in 2015, representing Western Pacific as WHO looks at the world. Second Congress and Global Summit in 2017 in Brazil, representing the Americas. Now we've done 2 of WHO's 6 regions. The third was in Rome, and thank you, AIC. Hey, Lorenzo. Hey, Umberto. Representing Euro, so 3 of the regions. We tried to go to Disney World together and see Mickey Mouse in 2021, but COVID prevented that. But we had a virtual Congress, and then here we're in the Southeast Asia region. So what's left? We want to go to Africa. We want to go to Eastern Mediterranean, Middle East, North Africa in the future. So that's giving you context to the demographics here. And Yadin, you're not going to be surprised, but Southeast Asia is in the lead here. But Europe's well represented, North America, South America, and other. So our friends from Africa are arriving now. Come on, Malawi, I see you out there. But anyway, so we're getting some balanced representation across the regions, Yadin, in the response to this poll question.
So again, since I cannot see the polling question, what question is on the screen?
Demographics, and are you placed in what part of the world?
So can we go to the next one?
Anything's possible, you know that.
Okay, let's go to the next polling question.
While we're talking sort of demographics, Yadin, and as they're doing that polling question, I'm going to mention some of the things on the slide. I mentioned a little earlier that we did do that global survey at the end of 2022 that showed the 6 regions of the world, a lot of their demographics, what parts of clinical engineering they want the most education about, and so on. Some of the things that have come out of that is that we're working with the Ministry of Health of Afghanistan. And I won't get into politics, but that former minister for several years is now in Switzerland, but he is still trying to serve his country that's under other political control, as we know. But GCEA has been invited in CED to assist the Minister of Health in a variety of ways. There's actually been a survey, and Uma, maybe in the crowd wave if you are. There you are, who's Afghan, but serves in the US at the moment, but working with the minister, her country's former minister, who's on WHO's executive committee. You know, that's good, right? And there was a survey of people across that country, even though it's a closed country in many ways. Many doctors, many engineers, many other health leaders have responded to that survey to drive that education. Also, we've been working very closely, and not so many of our African friends in the room at this moment, but we've brokered some meetings with all of sub-Saharan Africa. It's about 50 countries, and about 30 countries have showed up to those series of meetings, and about 10 of them French-speaking countries. And so we've got a leadership team, and we're ready to drive into the future, help national societies across sub-Saharan Africa working together. So hang on 1 minute. Yadin, maybe you and Callie can communicate offline. She can't close the poll for some reason at the moment to show us the answers. She's trying.
Can we go to the next polling question?
She's not yet. Somehow we're working on closing the poll.
Okay.
But Yadin, I can almost bring my looking backwards backwards to even yesterday, as well as the last 2 years of how we addressed our priorities, so that we now can. And I think your next polling question is, what are the new, we're moving towards the new priorities. I think that's why you're asking. We think one of the answers that's going to be given is, as GCEA and CED have worked with Africa, for example, across the whole region of the world, once again, as defined by WHO, we want to, and we've been encouraging your national societies, particularly the last several years, we want to create regular meetings, regional meetings with the other regions of the world. And these are complicated regions. I mentioned, sub-Saharan Africa, 48 countries or something like that. My friends from Europe here in the crowd will remind me there's, 50 plus countries in Europe, Western, Eastern, the former stands of the Soviet Union, and so on. So it's tricky. But the global CE community wants to encourage region by region that involves many national societies working together in a variety of ways. And we've got some ideas on how to do that. We've got building blocks that we've done in the past that we can build and help those regions. Yadin, we're starting to see poll number 3, professional purpose here, shown on our screen.
That's good progress. We might need to shorten the time that we allow for vote and go through that in the next minute and close it and then go to the next one.
Because we're about 40 minutes from the end of this whole session, this whole
Yeah.
summit.
So can we
Callie,
close
maybe, yeah,
this
closing the poll
and move to the next one?
and maybe show my last slide. That's why Callie has 2 hands, so she can. And Yadin, I would say there's several hundred people in the room here together, and there's what, about 40 folks online.
Yeah, that's very, very nice. I'm so happy people were able to get from the hotels to the venue, and so many people, in spite of the time zone differences from around the world, can get online. That's great. Now we need to see if we have the second part of poll 3 up.
Well, poll is so-called poll 4, professional purpose, is being answered right as we talk. And Yadin, the sample size of those in the room and online that are answering these questions is getting to be nearly, what's the right terms? Statistically significant. There we go. I won't use any more big words though, I promise.
Good. Like what numbers do you see there?
And the poll, I'm reading a little bit sideways, but it is showing professionally we're gaining more traction versus 2-3 years ago as a profession, which
That's
is not
good.
surprising given our track record with COVID, working with Adriana. As you already heard, during COVID years, 2020 to 2022, we put on best practice webinars with Adriana and around our own competencies that served 160 countries. So it's not surprising we're gaining more leverage. And the ministers of health, we all know in 2020 and 2021, when they met, they said, where are the ventilators? Where's the oxygen? So we're gaining that recognition. Now we've got this platform. What are we going to do with it? Which is really the purpose of these last few minutes. Can you change my slide? So Yadin, we're about to turn it over to you for to race to the finish line together.
Mhm. Yeah.
Callie, I don't know if you can put the polling off the screen just for a second. Well, other stakeholders that the global community has engaged, particularly in the last 2-3 years, because for those of you in the room that came in a little late, we were particularly happening what's happened since 2020, 2021 to now. How have we addressed the priorities we've set at previous versions of this meeting, and what new priorities might we set today? And we talked about 5 priorities: capacity building, impact measurement, credentialing, creating national policy, working with WHO is the first 5, and then working with women in clinical engineering, and then working with alliances. Some of these last alliances have been huge for us in making an impact. One of them is the Every Breath Counts Coalition. It's about 200 NGOs, non-governmental organizations, nonprofits, as we say in the US, including Gates Foundation and many others. We've been working alongside those, and so we can continue to work around oxygen issues. We're working with USAs, and of course your countries have similar. National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA. NASA is going to speak at this Congress about ways that they developed oxygen sources for Mars. They want to develop oxygen sources for hospitals. And they've got a lot of good solutions. And then people like Hashem Al-Fadel here in the crowd from Jordan, that is very involved with ISAQA, the International Quality Organization. So, and maybe I may be out of slides here, but these are examples of global entities we can partner with the alliances, Yadin, that you lead. I think my last slide that I've shown is as a result of that 2022 Clinical Engineering Global Survey, 128 countries, 870 responders. You can see, and the print's not too small, what are the priorities in the various regions of the world? What are the global priorities? Really have to say a lot about maintenance, a lot about quality, a lot about assessment, a lot about regulation, a lot about clinical engineering and information technology, which includes cybersecurity and things like that. So, Yadin, I'm really done with my part of looking backwards.
Very good. I think that the audience have a better understanding what is taking place, where did we come from, and how we are ready to take the next next step. So there are several good information placed in the chat box from Fred Hosea, for example, from Elliot, Ricardo. So if you would like to visit the chat box, you will find some presentations specifically to go along with what Tom described so carefully as to what we aim to do and what we did most recently. I would like to ask Kaliroy to get us through the polling question, the second half of what was on the screen, and then go to the final polling question.
And she has initiated the poll for folks. And she's completed that poll, actually.
So
how can we get that information to Yadin of what the results have been?
Did she finish the professional purpose?
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe somebody can take a screenshot and we can text it to you to help drive the communication.
So then let's go to the final polling question, and that is suggestions for challenges, and we'll open the cameras and the microphone for discussion. So if you can go ahead and put the challenges list.
Very soon.
Okay. The challenger list is based on what we learned over the past 7 years, and what we learned from working together in regional segments over the past 2 years, and put together what we think we can be defining as a draft for the coming 2 years. What should we focus on? And what I aimed is to put 7 specific challenges and let you react to them. And if needed, we'll add new challenges that are not mentioned. And then I would like to see your vote on a scale of 0 to 5. What do you think is the most critical and what is the least critical? And that will give us a specific scaling of what you, the audience, believe we need to do over the next 2 years. And while that is coming up, I would like to ask you a question that is not on the poll, but a question about the periodicity of this session. The Global CE Summit is very critical for the discipline. We decide what the challenges are, we focus the resources we have, and we go after progress there. is the time right for us to increase the periodicity of this meeting from biannual as part of this Congress to an annual meeting? It's so easy to do virtual global meeting annually and see that we can use more speed to achieve reaching our targets. So one question that is on my mind is this audience group feel that we need to do annually versus biannually? And Fred already jumped with what I know he would rather do, and that is a daily. Although he put monthly, I think he wants daily working group. And I need to find the volunteers that are willing to do that. But Fred,
That's called WhatsApp.
Fred suggesting even monthly meeting. I think that's regionally can definitely be done and raise those regional outcome to a global outcome on a yearly basis. Maybe will be a good increase of speed. So how are we doing on the challenges list? Is it up?
Yes. And by the way, Yadin, there's about 300 folks in the room now.
Wow. Fantastic. That's good time to run that survey and ask you to look at the challenges that are up. The first one is impact, that basically suggesting that to increase clinical engineering engagement at different levels, we need to identify networking with decision makers in hospital, industry, academia, regulatory, and international organization, just like the GCEA is doing. On a scale of 0 to 5, you can choose this to be very critical or least critical in your mind. The next one is professional recognition. We need to see to it when we talk, they don't wonder or ask the question, what is clinical engineering? Where are you coming from? What is your job? What are you doing for healthcare? From that, we're looking at professional credentialing. If everybody around the table, all the other stakeholders, have their professional credentialing, board review, certification, oral examination, and we are the only one that don't have that, it's hard to make the point that we are competent professional if we don't have a means to show it. So professional credentialing is part of the ability to have an equal voice with other stakeholders. Moving then to lack of national association or other enabling organization to create opportunity for the individuals that are here, online or in the room, to continue to work together. Do you have a national association or international organization, or you think we need to provide more opportunity? We need to raise the number of national associations that are working with us, that will take our input. Do we have enough policy relating to medical devices and its use? Recently, the right to repair, the right to service came up, mostly from the other industry of commercial product, but it's well known in healthcare that we have barriers to be able to do service on medical devices. I suggest that if we are competent, not everyone, but if we are competent, then we should be able to do service on what we own. And then the capacity building, Tom referred to that fairly at length, and you know about it. And the last one is the body of knowledge and body of practice. And have we defined the discipline clear enough, especially looking to the future, as Elliot and Ricardo were showing us that digital health AI, cybersecurity, robotics may not included in the body of knowledge so far, and we should. So I think that if we can take 0 to 5 points, vote on them, and then see which one rise to the top according to the opinion of the people online and in the room.
Yadin, in a moment, while all this is data is being correlated, and just very quickly, I'd love to call on Elliot for maybe just 60 seconds and Ricardo for 60 seconds to talk about how all these priorities integrate together. You know, we talked about a lot of stuff that's already been done, but how can we use this already been done things as building blocks for where we want to go in the future around these topics, which Elliot could speak about very quickly, and Ricardo, particularly about the CEIT challenge. We all know digital health is where healthcare is and is going. And, you know, there's a certification process around that.
Let's do it.
So go ahead, Elliot.
Yes. So one of the brainstorming ideas we had is related to materials we've already developed. We've created 40 or more workshops around the world. We call them advanced clinical engineering workshops. And there are many dozens of us who have participated in those. I've been involved in Nepal, Dominica, Cuba, Mexico, and throughout Europe. And these are 3 to 5 day training programs that cover topics like health technology assessment, health technology management, IT and digital health, and risk management, and also aspects of forensics and investigations. We have access to all of that slide material that could be updated and renewed and translated into the many languages of the world. And that could be used as a base of education, certification, body of knowledge, and the like very, very quickly. Thank you.
Yes, Jad, and just to elaborate on what Elliot just said, I was actually one of the people who benefited from this advanced clinical engineering workshops, along with colleagues from many countries in Latin America. And one thing that we need to do is revive this and train the trainers. I mean, we need this body of knowledge and body of practice to be translated into Arab and Chinese and Spanish and so many other languages, so that those trainers can fulfill the goal of advancing clinical engineering worldwide. And then we also need the continuous education to keep the body of knowledge current, because technology obsolescence is in a 3-year turn. So unless we keep up to date, we're going to be obsolete very quickly.
Thank you, Ricardo and Elliot. Very good. That set up the map of from ideas and discussion to actual deliverable. I think that one thing that we haven't discussed is the evidence. We need to collect the evidence. And regarding the direction we're taking, if we don't have publication in peer-reviewed journals, such as the Global Clinical Engineering Journal, we will not be able to demonstrate that we have evidence to support what we preach. So I think that one of the important things that we need to do is to begin to publish what data we have so it can be used. I would appreciate, Tom, if you can tell me if we finished the...
We finished the poll and we have the results we can share. And people in the room can see it on the screen. But so, of course, Yadin, you recall the first question was impact. How do we increase it? And that was number 5 had 52%. So, and number 4 had 25% between. So 4s and 5s was 77%.
Okay.
You want me to keep going? Lack of professional recognition was really spread between 3, 4, and 5. 3, 26, 4, 26, and 5, 33. So what's that? 52, 80, 85% were 3, 4, and 5 in terms of desire for more recognition, which has been a past priority, of course. And of course, COVID gave us a chance for recognition because we had to step up. Number 3 around professional credentialing. 3 was 18%, 4 was 33%, and 5 was 41%. So what's that? 7? That's in the 90s, 92% from 3 to 5. So credentialing is still a big issue. Lack of national associations, and a lot of work has gone on in that in recent years. 3, 23%, 4, 31%, and 5, 18%. So that's, about 70% saying, yeah, still really need more work there. Lack of policy, 53% at 5 level, and then pretty equal between 1 through 4. So it's certainly an issue. Not everybody is ready to make a difference, but people like Italy and AIC, I picked on them before, but they've been around 30 years. Every year in their annual meeting, they go change a city at a time, and nationally they're changing things. So that's a way to win the right to be involved with policy. Question 6 about capacity building, 66% Yadin at 5. That's still a very big issue. And another 32% between 3 and 4, almost. And your number 7, lack of uniform bodies of knowledge and body of practice, 26% at 3, 13% at 4, and 47 at 5. So what's that? 86% still say, we need more work around that. I think Hanan, are you in the room? Hey, Hanan from Kuwait has been begging to us to help create the job descriptions around the roles. And so now we have the information, but we need to take these next steps. What I heard Elliot and Ricardo saying, we've done all these cool things before, but how do we get them into other languages? How do we get them into other regions? How do we get more down to earth, more granular with the responses to this? And Hanan's been crying out for that for IMRO and for Eastern Mediterranean region for Kuwait for years. I think we have the data now to do that based on this survey, but back to you, Yadin.
Good. I appreciate the summary, Tom. It looks to me like we hit the target very well with those 7 subjects. There are a couple that may be less challenging, less critical than others, but it's obvious that we hit some strong agreement on at least 4 of the 7. And at this point, I would like to open the mic and to those online to raise their hand if they think that there is additional topic that need to be voted on, or if they want to have any comment about what they've seen on the screen with this voting. So either...
And Yadin, while we're doing that, excuse me, we'll pass the mic around. I know Elliot's holding one, or there was one in the front row. We can get it to people with help. Well, one of the things you said was lots of building blocks, as we've said, lots of past best practices are available to be fine-tuned and used for today, but we need to get them into other languages. And so, one thing out of this summit, and we're not going to solve it in the next 15 minutes, but each of the regions of the world should put forward maybe a small team, minimum maybe 2 or 3 people that can be involved in translating key documents into the the regional languages, so that we can pass on these best practices easier. Another thing is, we're going pretty fast. I mean, some of this crowd has got gray hair like me and has been around a long time. Some are pretty young. We're going through a lot of information, processing it pretty quickly here.
Some are praying for.
Some lost their hair. I didn't hear you.
Some are praying for gray hair.
But my point being, we're not going to solve everybody's not going to have the same understanding of what's just happened here in the next 15 minutes. But this, this recording and the results and all this data will be put in people's hands to chew on for the next few weeks. And so, maybe by the end of the year, we'll have enough information to drive change, although we'll be quick to put the data in front of you. Over to you, Yadi.
Okay, so anybody online that would like to raise hand and voice comment about the final poll question and the 7 subject in suggesting additional or confirming what you've seen?
Yeah, excuse me.
Yeah, if you can identify yourself, please.
Yeah, this is Hashim Al-Fadil from
Oh,
Jordan.
كيف حالك؟
Yes. Hello, Yadin. Hello, everybody. Yes. One of the things that I believe strongly that will give the clinical engineering a lot of recognitions to the top decision makers, two things. Among the others, of course, that were mentioned, one of them is the health technology assessment. I think decision makers, top decision makers, will value this a lot, and it's being overlooked by many organizations, I think, including, excuse me to say that, by GCE, not so much attention to it, but the decision makers in health technology are always, especially top executives, top decision makers, they pay a lot of attention to this, especially as recommendations to them to make decisions. And clinical engineers can play a big role into this. Maybe that's something to look into it and shed a lot of light into this. The second thing I would say that it's a certification or accreditation to clinical engineering departments. I mean, in addition to credentialing of the professionals, also credentialing and recognitions and accreditation to the clinical engineering departments. And this can be as like optional, and to receive, let's say, a recognition certificate from GCE or from the body of clinical engineering. And that will also give more recognition to the department. That's, of course, after developing standards that cover the whole life cycle of clinical engineering. I know WHO in the recent conference I attended in Seoul for ISQA, WHO has developed standards for hospitals, but not to receive accreditation by WHO, but they will receive recognition that they have applied all the standards to be recognized, and they are using the standards for accreditation. So two things, as in summary, is accreditation to clinical engineering, and also health technology assessment.
And Hashem, just a quick comment that you already heard, we're working with the European HTA leadership, and that's connected to HTA Internet. But my other point is Canada has best practices around accrediting CE departments. So we can build on Canada's work. Yadin?
Yes.
Absolutely right. They have a document referring to that, and Canada is a member of GCEA, already discussed.
CMBES, yes, Canada.
And they are a member of the GCEA Alliance, and we already discussed between us a mechanism to take their developed document and share it with the world. So Hashem, accreditation of CE department, excellent idea. We started to work on them.
Thank you.
Anybody else that have comments in the room?
Yeah, this is Fred. I raised my hand. Let's see. Over 25 years ago, over 25 years ago, I rewrote the job description for clinical engineers at Kaiser Permanente and created a new job category called clinical systems engineers, because we were having to integrate with the IT systems. And that's a specialty within Kaiser. And increasingly, I became aware that there are lots of other systems that we needed to integrate with, the Joint Commission, FDA, et cetera, and WHO. So I think we need to have constant encouragement for people to think more systemically in their careers, and I guess to recognize also the what I call the limits of traditional models of knowledge formation within conferences, journals, published books, et cetera. Those things change at a very slow rate. And we're living in a time where things can change from one day to another. And so some of those are really exciting things, but we have no way currently of keeping track of those thousands of innovations that are going on every week. So some of that stuff I've covered in the strategic proposals that I attached. But I think we need to really take seriously the concept of polycrisis, which is sort of beyond disaster management. It's the idea that multiple bad things can go wrong simultaneously. You can have huge wildfires and an earthquake. You can have a nuclear threat along with a pandemic, or you can have mass migrations along with economic decline, et cetera. So the World Bank, the IMF, and lots of other, the World Economic Forum have all recognized that polycrisis is a seismic shift in our version of the future. So we can't just expect to go back to what we have had in the past. I think we need a new way of thinking about the future, which is more anticipatory of potential crises and how to be prepared for them. So I renew my annual plea for disaster management and preparedness to be part of our professional career toolkit so that we will be people at the table when bad things happen, and we will be the people with more systemic visions of how things need to be managed. And finally, I would say health technology design, HTD. We need to get ahead of the HTA assessment process. By the time we're assessing things, it's already too late to change what we're about to buy. So the more clinical engineers can get involved in the design process, working in multidisciplinary teams with doctors and nurses, as well as with different medical device innovators in the business sector and government sector, the better off we'll be. So let's try to add HTD at the front end, the whole career path of assessment, management, etc. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Very good comments. You and I worked on disaster preparation, including at the level of WHO, and we went around the world in a couple other workshops. And I felt that we don't have a large enough community that is trained to help take this program further. So what I would suggest is that we need to look internally, and maybe first step is educate clinical engineers to the concept of their role, potential role in disaster, then take it out to other stakeholders and tell them, here, we are trained, we are competent, we can do that. What do you think about that approach?
Oh yeah, anything is going to be better. And now that we have these, strong associations with China and with India, I think we have a lot greater potential to move in a large way on these things, to fill gaps in research, knowledge formation, innovation, and strategy.
So if I'll be so bold, I would like for you to be ready and prepared to lead a task force that the Global Clinical Engineering Alliance will create 2024 on that topic.
Oh, okay. I'll check my calendar.
Yes.
Thanks, Fred. Yadin, we've got input from Fabiola.
I think Eva was voting
Okay, cool.
for a while. And we said on the chat box that Eva will go next. Eva, are you there?
Yes, of course. My comment is very similar to the earlier one. I would like to suggest to work also on models of compendium of models and evaluation of organization of clinical engineering, because we have made a very big progress in standardization and certification of education. But looking from the point of view of countries when where clinical engineering is at the beginning of organization and education, we are looking for models and evaluation of different models of organization. So my suggestion is to work on such kind of models and evaluations and any kind of suggestions in this field. Thank you very much.
I like the idea because you did not say department, but you say model, CE organization model, that triggering variety of opportunity. And I wish if you can maybe
Yes, but
yeah, go ahead.
sorry, but I said model because I was thinking not only about department in the hospital, but about organization in the country, including Ministry of Health and other organizations. So I think that it was my idea, yes, that it is not department. Thank you.
Yeah, that's clarified. I better understand where we need to go with that, and we will follow up with you. If you have material, in the past you told me it's in Polish, but if you have material in English, maybe we can start circulating it.
Yeah, Yadin, we can link that with the work that's been done in Mexico on how to create a white paper, talk with the Minister of Health, and also that's been done in Pakistan. There were models, but they were communication packed white papers. But back to you.
Great. No, Tom, that's good. Good. Yeah, let's follow up with that. And Tom, who you wanted to hear next from?
Abiola?
Hi. Hello, Tom. Hello, Jadine.
Hello.
Nice to see you. Hello, everyone. Just 2 points that were commented in the meeting that I consider important. One of these is together with the spreading of the information of the presentations, so forming education programs for clinical engineers, we must link it to the comment you said in regarding the documentation of the work we are doing. I mean, publishing. Yes, we have to proper publishing our work in order to have enough evidence documented to prove the impact and the value that we know we have. But it's important to have this kind of evidence to show to the stakeholders, mainly the ministers of health and any other important persons that may be related to the work we do and how we impact. And the other is we began a project in women in clinical engineering with very interesting success during this year. But this is only the first step towards important considerations on different profiles of professionals in engineering and in general. Yeah, women in clinical engineering has proved that there are a lot of things to say and many roles, main roles for women in this profession, but we have to open the window to include some other profiles that may not be seen as much as we want to see the women. So there's maybe some considerations to further work and efforts and initiatives. Thanks.
As always, Fabiola, very good comments. I wish that your first comment about the need to publish the evidence would be on full volume, loud, that everybody can hear. And the same goes for WIC, Women in Clinical Engineering, is a very good initiative. And already you have good results with webinars and publication about that. But we all busy. Nobody has extra time. And when I talk about why don't you publish, two things I am hearing. Nobody taught me how to publish. I am in the hospital working hard, have no time to understand how do you write for publication. And number two, I'm busy. Even if I know how to write a paper, I'm busy. So if we all busy, who is going to do some of the work. We just need to realize nobody going to do it for you. Nobody going to do it for us if we're not going to do it for ourselves. So please go to author instruction on the Global Clinical Engineering Journal, easy to see, author guidelines, easy to start with, title, abstract, references, history, the method you use, outcome, results, recommendation. Easy to do it. What you're working on every day, just publish.
So Yadin, we need to wrap up, brother. It's just after 11 local.
Absolutely. We had great event, Global CE Summit that has been conducted every 2 years, have shown a minor start and great achievement, as Tom shared with us very carefully with details. We have good memorandum of understanding with major organization. We need to pursue that further and build upon it. We got understanding of ranking of what you think those 7 categories seems to be resonant with the audience today. It seemed like you confirm that some of them, at least 5, are really critical challenge that we need to focus on. And at least with Fred Ozia, who is not giving up and will keep on preaching until it gets done, that is commitment. That's a devotion. And maybe now, Fred, with the idea of polycrisis, but as we agreed, maybe to start with disaster prep for clinical engineering, we got this moving as well. I like to thank you a lot for stay up at night wherever you are around the world, for coming up early morning in VISAG and participating, and for Kaliroy working so hard to make this Congress success as well as this event, and for Tom, who is so gracious and always inclusive of everybody around him. Tom, my dearest appreciation. Anything you want to add, Tom?
Thank you, Yadin. And we can prove one of Fabiola's points of the 300 plus folks in the room, about 70% are women. And we're thankful that you're taking over the world, and we appreciate that. Thank you, Yadin. Good way to drive us. I think we're going to turn over in a few moments to Jatinder and Remy to start the next step. So thank you.
And we will have later this afternoon, India time, the first annual Global Clinical Engineering Alliance meeting, and you're invited. Thank you very much all. And thanks for the gracious host, AMZT. AMTZ. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.